Hi, and welcome back to Rick's Room. I'm Rick Grant, sitting today with one of my favorite experts, Michael Harris. Mike, thanks for being back with us again.
Always a pleasure, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Now, if you've seen our previous shows, you know that Mike is an expert in Six Sigma. He's a consultant with BlackFin Group. He owns his own asset management and consulting company, and he's visited with us on a number of occasions. But Mike, last time you were here, you talked to us about change management.
Right.
Critically important, but we keep these shows short, and we really didn't have time to dig into it. And I know you know this stuff like the back of your hand. So if we had more time to talk about it, what would you tell us about it?
Oh, that sounds great, Rick. Yeah, I'd love to get a little bit deeper dive. Something that's important to me and valuable to me, a big part of my life. Again, as you mentioned, we talked about change management, talking about specifically about leadership and roles, responsibilities, and tactics during times of uncertainty, which obviously right now that's what we're into. And so, one of the concepts or one of the philosophies would be um, those who those leaders who stand still during times of uncertainty and those who actually take steps and are aggressive in their actions during times of uncertainty. And I believe that a big part of those leaders who feel comfortable in being able to step forward during times of uncertainty is their confidence in the foundation of their house in terms of their infrastructure, their management, and their company, and knowing that they can have the basis to be able to move forward. And I think that's a really important aspect of any business. And as we talked about in our previous, I think it may be a good time to always to take a step, look under the hood, look at your process, look at your management, look at your infrastructure, look at your risk, and making sure that you have the right foundation.
Well, I think you're exactly right, Mike. And I think we both know a lot of executives who have the confidence, but they don't really have a good toolbox to know what to do going forward. So I know you go in, you talk to these leaders, you help them through that. Talk to us about some of the tools you've been successful with helping them deal with this.
Yeah, I love that analogy and toolbox. Two of the primary tools we use is the IMAC process, Six Sigma, looking at risk, looking at gap analysis, and the other is looking at design thinking, which is a little bit more of a voice of the customer, looking at the users, an empathy approach to risk analysis. And those two complement each other very, very well. Again, one really Six Sigma, really looking at the data and of your process, and the other is looking more of the users and more of an empathetic view of the person actually managing the process. What's their motivations? Why are they there? What excites them? Where they think their risks are. And so again, those two complement each other very well. And we take those and kind of go through a company and look at a bunch of different aspects or facets of the company and looking for potential risks as it relates to the entity as a whole.
Now, Mike, I've talked to a number of management consultants over the years, and they kind of grab a tool and then they stick with that tool, and that's what they do. How did you find out about combining these two very different disciplines in your work?
Well, thank you for asking that because it's exciting to me. I had become a Six Sigma black belt about 20 years ago, 22 years ago. I've been using that tool, the IMAC process, as a leader running companies for the last 20 something years. And it's been very valuable to me to look under my own hood, looking at the processes that I run, really making sure that I understood where my risks were. And then just recently, I got involved with design thinking through a project that I did. And it opened up my eyes, really looking at a different way of looking at process management and looking at gap analysis. And from that perspective, it was the antithesis of what really I've been focusing on, which is again purely data driven. Give me the data, show me where the faults are, show me where the standard deviations were, so to speak. And so this allows me to really, again, not to be redundant, but look at the user and look at the way they're interacting with your process systems, uh, uh, reporting, et cetera, and see what's important to them and how they interact with the process as a whole. So that was really an eye opener for me. I really enjoyed it.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, the first person in that team is the leader. And so take a half step back for us and talk to us about how you see the leadership role in the companies that you consult with.
Right. Right. So yeah, you're absolutely right. The leader starts with the leadership, and there's a couple different components of that. One is you have to obviously have buy-in from the leader before you step into an organization, and being able to have access to their process, access to their staffing, making sure that they understand what your goals are, working with them as a partner. I think I really brought that up as an emphasis last time we spoke, talking about the partnership in this type of transaction, where as a consultant, we going in at BlackFin, going in, looking and partnering with the company, and particularly the leaders, to find where the end game should be. And so, from that aspect, you have to absolutely have buy-in from the leadership, having them give you full access to the organizational structure, et cetera. So, a couple of things that we do is we look at leadership training. We look at leadership training not only from the top, but looking at the intermediate levels, at managerial levels, et cetera, in terms of the way the communication is happening, the way the organizational structure promotes the communication and the handoffs. You have to look at the way that the control mechanisms between leadership and the management staff interact. So these are all real important things. So if you have buy-in with the leadership at the top, then therefore you have the ability to reach into the staff, look at all the individuals, all the stakeholders in the process, and being able to get everybody's buy-in, everybody's support. And obviously you have a much more effective, much more successful transaction and working relationship when you do so.
No, I like that. But talking about staff, I mean, right now, I guess the federal government has brought this home to people. We're seeing a lot of changes in staffing. I can't imagine you going in to help a company really understand their potential without creating staff changes in the process. So, talk to us a little bit about that important element of it.
No, absolutely. And so, a couple of things that we found over and over again is if you think about risk in a process, you look at the big milestone events. And we found typically where the real risk is in the handoffs in between users, particularly when it talks about technology, the way users are interacting and utilizing technology, the way one individual is handing off a step in the process to another individual, making sure that there are control mechanisms to expedite that process. I mean, time and time again, we've gone in and found when we do what, typical shadow training or shadow survey and sitting with an individual working in organization, we find that they're typically doing, more often than not, actually doing workarounds than the process mapping reflects. They're doing so because it's comfortable for them. It's something that they've been doing forever, and it works for them. Maybe not be the most efficient manner, but again, they're comfortable with it. And really being able to see them and work with them to understand that using the system, using the automation, using the technology more effectively is obviously very, very beneficial. And not only that, Rick, you get great feedback. So you get feedback from the users as they start using these technologies, about maybe there's a better way to use them. Maybe there's a step that's redundant. Maybe there's a step that's missing. And you didn't realize until the people who are knee deep, the stakeholders who are really managing the process, step in and say, hey, let's take a look at this. Profound feedback and very instrumental in process change. You look at technology and automation. Everybody looks at technology, but really have to use at the user interaction. Good technology always has the ability to say A plus B equals C, and therefore one step's completed, it goes to the next step. That's pure automation. But you really, really have to look at the way that users are using that technology in the end run.
Yeah, I like that. As you know, Mike, I've reported so much on technology companies. One of the biggest challenges they always have is adoption. And then they wonder after a while why 20% of their team is functioning so much better than the other 80. And I think it's
Yeah.
those workarounds, right? If they
Right.
just had a consultant come in and shadow these folks and find out what's working and why they're so much better, you could spread that efficiency across the whole staff. So yeah, I love you talking about that. I love you working on it. Now we don't have a lot of time left, but last time you talked a lot about change management and managing the process. But at the end of that process, the implementing change, even if they get everything right, they can still fall down at the end. So when you work with companies, how do you help them make sure that they're doing the best they possibly can at that important stage?
No, it's very, very important, Rick. You know, C at the end of the IMAG process is for control. And it's obviously utmost important that you have those control measures to make sure that you mitigate or try to eliminate as much possible risk or moving forward. That starts really going back to the leadership component. It's really important that leadership mandates and continues to strive to have the implementation of the control mechanisms that you have put in place. More often than not, when we go back and visit somebody, if something has gone slightly off the rails or something is not performing as much as or effectively as we think it should be, it's because we're not adhering to those control mechanisms. But also, is that we go back in and take a look under the hood again, working with the team and find out maybe there are additional control mechanisms or maybe a change to the control mechanisms that we implemented that would be more effective. And so that's really important. Again, it starts with leadership, being able to work with a team, having everybody buy into not only the process changes that you've put in place, but adhering to the control mechanisms that you've implemented moving forward.
Mike, I love that. I want to put your email up on the screen. Make sure I got this right because I know people are going to want to go deeper on this with you. I really love it. You coming in and hanging out in the room with me and we can talk about this. But companies all over our space, particularly now, are struggling and they really need some help. There's so much uncertainty. You mentioned it earlier. They
Exactly.
really need some objective feedback to help them kind of make sense of what's going on right there. So if you're watching this now and you haven't already emailed Mike, do it. mharris@blackfingroup.com. Um, Final thoughts, Mike, before I let you get back to work.
No, it's just a pleasure to speak with you. I love this topic. I love these types of chats. I started getting into consulting and working with businesses because, as a business leader for 25 years, it was always imperative for me to have people come and look at my processes. They have objective, forest to the tree, so to speak, eyes, and I want to be able to provide that to my partners.
Very good. Join us next time in the room. Mike, thanks for being with us again.
My pleasure, my friend.